Okay. So, hello, good evening,
Hi.
everyone. And today we have Manvi Agarwal with us. It's no point for me to introduce her. She can clearly tell us much better what she's doing. It's so much more interesting to get to know from her. Manvi, you can tell us about yourself. Like as far as I know, you've done your bachelor's and your master's in history, right?
Yeah, I completed my bachelor's. I didn't complete my master's in
Oh,
history.
okay. Okay, so you've done your bachelor's in history. So
Yeah.
then what did you take up after that?
Well, I finished my bachelor's and then, well, I just took the path that everybody seemed to be taking at that point, which was going for a master's in history. And then at some point, I went on exchange to Groningen. And there I came across a bunch of courses in logic, mathematical logic. And yeah, and I really liked it. And then I decided, well, I don't want to do history anymore.
Okay, so that's like a complete different trajectory, like from history, and then
Mhm.
you finally find yourself in mathematics. So one question which I know most of the people will be thinking right now is, so was it difficult? Like when you shift to maths from history, how difficult?
Mhm. Well, I mean, I was lucky to have really good math teachers in school. So my base in math was pretty decent when I started off. I mean, of course, it was different, but that's primarily because I mean every field has its own jargon. So you really need to know how to cut through all that fancy stuff and get to what they're really trying to say.
Right. So and then from there, where did you find yourself?
So well, I actually started out in my exchange year at the Faculty of Arts, and I did a few courses in history. But then I discovered that the Faculty of Science and Engineering had a couple of courses in logic, and then I got involved there. And from logic, I went on to study multi-agent systems, and I really liked what was happening there. So I decided that I wanted to explore things a little bit more. So then I moved to Chennai for I think 8 months, and I worked at the Indian Statistical Institute.
Oh, right.
And I worked on a project on epistemic protocol logic. And then I had to decide basically like what I wanted to do next. And I had to decide whether I really wanted to take this up seriously. And then I thought, well, I think it's a good idea to to think about it as a career for myself. And then I said, well, okay, I'm going to do a master's in this and actually get a good formal background in it.
Okay. Right. So what do you do now? Like right now, what do you do as a career?
Yeah, so I'm at the end of my master's now. I'm just working on finishing up my thesis. And throughout this time, I've been working as a teaching assistant at the university. I've also worked as a multi-agent systems modeler with a research project. This month, like even last week, I started working as a machine learning engineer with a company that I did my internship with. And right now, I work part time with them, and I'll be joining them full time once I graduate.
Okay, that's a lot of jargon for me. So, like that is the one thing that I can understand. Like right now, given the fact that most of us who are either watching this or like for me particularly, we are from a stream where we do not really understand all the things that you just said, like machine learning. What is like? Could you walk us through the process of what exactly is machine? Like many of us, we don't really know whether we will find ourselves interested by that or not, because most of us are not even aware of what it really is.
Hmm.
So, like, could you just give us an explanation about what artificial intelligence, machine learning, and why did you find it so interesting?
Yeah, so artificial intelligence is a huge field, and there are a lot of subfields within it. But I'm most like equipped to tell you about the two that I've kind of found myself in. So the first was logic, and I liked logic because it was a world which made sense in some sense to me. You could study very subjective things in a very objective way, and that's what really attracted me to it. Um, and with respect to machine learning, the thing that we do in machine learning is we basically get, to put it in very simple terms, you get a data set and you get a goal. For example, you get a data set of images of the digits 0 to 9, and you have to teach a model that the model needs to have the correct parameters, such that when the training is finished and I present it an image of some digit, it should be able to tell me what that digit is. So that's just one example. I mean, of course, you can have very complicated data sets. You can have really complicated tasks. So yeah, that's what I really liked about machine learning.
Okay, so there is this one question that I have. So, in what ways has history, if at all, helped you in any of these projects?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually a really good question, because people think that doing a degree in the arts may not be very useful when you move fields like I have. But I have to admit that my education in history and in general in the humanities helped me to um, process information and really complicated ideas really quickly. Because when you're a student of history, and you would know that too, you are asked to read a lot and you're asked to
Of
write a
course.
lot, and you're supposed to reflect on the things that other people write, and you're supposed to be critical about it. And to be fair, a lot of scientific disciplines don't have that explicitly as part of their study plan. So I
Very
think that really helped me a lot to actually sort of cut through everything and figure out what exactly somebody is saying.
So basically, the subjectivity is something that comes in very handy.
So, well, not the objectivity, but when, for example, you read a research article, I think the skill of actually processing something, a piece of research writing, which is really complicated, and something that communicates complicated ideas, that is a skill in itself, which actually cuts across all disciplines. So, especially as part of my bachelor's at Presidency, I was really taught to read really big texts very quickly and to reflect on them in a critical way. To not accept what people are saying just because they have published it somewhere.
Right. Yeah, not to take it at face value.
Exactly.
And that usually, like, not just in switching fields, it really comes in handy in a lot of things to like be
Yeah,
able to
yeah.
not take things at a face value and to be able to understand there must be like the author's intent. Like if someone's writing it, there is an
Yeah.
intent, there's something. So that comes in very handy as well. So, but yeah, it is a surprise like for places like logic and you know what, usually people have the idea that logic is something much more definitive, much more objective, and streams of these. So you have no room for subjectivity or such scope of like what would I say, coming through critical analysis, etc. So yeah, that
Mhm.
is a bit that is what sounds very different in this context of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, if you look at a field like machine learning, I would say it's one of the most subjective fields out there, because you're essentially optimizing for a loss function that you define as the machine learning designer. So I mean, there is no place for objectivity there.
Okay, so how often do you face questions about your background in history by working in a computer science field?
Well, initially, well, to be fair, most of the questions have been from people with my educational background. So people who have studied in India, for example, because the division between the humanities and the sciences is really rigid. there. Most of the questions that I've faced have been from either professors or students who I've encountered in that kind of a context. But even here, I mean, people do people did at least ask me a lot of times, especially when I was here on my exchange year. Well, you're a student of history. What are you doing at the Faculty of Science and Engineering? But it's become less and less over time. I've been in this field for 4 years now, and I've done projects, I've done internship, and I've worked throughout in like different jobs. So yeah, it's become easier for me to face those questions.
In fact, I find it very remarkable that if you go as an exchange student, you were allowed to take up such field, because I'm stressing on the word allowed, because in
Yeah,
India, as you said, this the difference is so rigid that
yeah,
like there's always this perception that once you've taken humanities, you cannot, for the for no matter what you do, no matter how what you are, if you've taken up humanities, you cannot at any circumstances be capable enough to take, like, handle the sciences. You won't even have the option of choosing them. So the rigidity is there in the stream as such.
yeah. I mean, this within this rigidity is baked this idea that people who study the sciences are somehow inherently more intelligent or somehow inherently more capable of doing things than people who study the humanities, which I think is a pile of rubbish.
Right. That's actually very true. I mean, quite recently, also, I just took part in a hackathon by MIT, and the first question that I was asked by some of my relatives or the friends was, "But isn't hackathon meant for technical students? Like,
Hmm.
so what are you doing there? What can you even do as a master's?" And trust me, I also felt the same thing. Like, but then at the end of the day, it worked out fine.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, you don't really need to even go into like hardcore tech or math oriented fields to be able to contribute to a tech intensive product, for example, because now, I mean, I'm sure you've been reading about it. Algorithms that have a very big impact on people's lives, for example, filtering candidates for a job profile, they're very heavily plagued by bias. So if you're a
Of
woman or if
course.
you're a person of color, you are more likely to be ignored by such a filtering system, for example, or you're more likely to not be recommended for very high paying jobs, for example. So in that sense, I think that people with a background in the humanities have even more to contribute because, well, we have the training to actually think critically and
Look
to
beyond the biases.
exactly and to even figure out that bias exists.
Exactly, that is a good point, because yes, that is true. Most of, like, these things are like, how would I say, at least in India, if you find, there is this mentality that the technical colleges cannot be with the humanities college, because humanities college are too much into politics, they fight too much, like half the time they are on the streets and not in the classrooms. But then, so these distinctions have emerged so much that the mentality has set in that if you are taking humanities, you are more into, you'll be fighting for rights, you'll be fighting for freedoms, and it's scorned upon in a manner that,
Hmm.
like, you're not you're not studying. If you're a student, you study, you don't do this. So
Yeah.
yes, this climbing up the hierarchy or even boosting the hierarchy, that mentality is so sort of rigid in the system that you can't really maneuver from it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, in fact, I was not, I think, even eligible to sit for some of the entrance exams, and allow myself to be considered for an MTech in India. So,
Yeah, that is why I used the word allowed last time, because in India you can't be
yeah,
allowed to do this.
yeah.
So, in comparison, are your colleagues when you're working with, so are they also from such diverse backgrounds, or are you the square peg in the round table?
Um, well, let me see. Well, I do know a lot of philosophy work happens at the Faculty of Science and Engineering. In fact, my My academic advisor holds a double appointment at the Faculty of Science and Engineering and at the Faculty of Philosophy. So there are people who cut across disciplines, and I think that as long as you know what you're doing, you won't be discouraged to do whatever you want, basically.
Philosophy and science together. Bacon will be happy. So, how much do these MNCs appreciate people from diverse backgrounds, like the MNCs that you're working with? So, do they take it
Yeah,
as
so
a negativity of yours or weakness that you don't really belong from the background, or is it a plus point or an advantage?
yeah, so I've never worked with an MNC actually, so I don't know if I'm qualified to answer. But as far as the place that I'm working at right now goes, it's a mid-sized scale up, and it works with anti-money laundering software. So it helps banks and payment service providers fight against financial crime, for example, terrorism financing or
Right.
money laundering. And they've never had a problem. So
Right. Because usually one perceives that you will hold a disadvantage or you will be taken as a, how would I say, shallow candidate. Like,
mhm.
there is this one perception that you will be a shallow candidate if you're switching stream or you're such a diverse background.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, it can really vary from person to person. So it also matters a lot to have the right mentors,
Right.
because very early on in my transition, I had some really excellent mentors, and they really helped me kind of understand what are the things I need to do if I need to actually make the transition. And they gave me the opportunities that helped me find other opportunities for myself. So I think especially when you make such a transition, it's important to know who you should talk to.
Actually, that's my next question to make that transition. Like for you, it happened when you were as an exchange student. So let's say
Mm-hmm.
someone who doesn't has that opportunity and now wants to maybe switch streams. So what is the first thing that they should do, or what are the things that they need to keep in mind in that context?
So the first thing I would say is that before you make the transition, be mindful that it's not going to be easy. So make sure that you actually want to do it, because it's going to be difficult, and you will face difficulties apart from just other people questioning you. You'll find it difficult to sort of enter this new field and face like totally different a totally different language of working. So you need to first be sure that you want to do it, and then I would suggest that you look at, for example, online courses first, just to get a flavor of the kind of things that you can expect, and that will help you to sort of understand exactly what you want to do when you have made the transition.
Right. So like prepare yourself and just give you
Yeah,
a touch
yeah.
tutorials kind of like.
Yeah, exactly. And once you know that, try getting in touch with people who you think might be of help to you and who you think might be willing to help you. I've always found that the best way of actually finding opportunities, because whether it's any of my projects, whether it's my internship, whether it's a job, I mean, if I want it and if I think I can do it, then I just literally go up to the person and talk to them. I mean, it'll never hurt to ask, so just ask.
That's actually nice. So to ask you, is there any procedure for applications as such?
Applications for what exactly?
Basically, let's say if one decides to switch to machine learning, so
Mm-hmm.
so what is the procedure? What are the qualifications or eligibility criteria that you have to meet in order to do the apply for it?
Yeah. So you mean for a master's, right?
Right, yeah, for
Yeah.
masters.
So, well, the first thing you need to do is decide where you want to study. And in that, you might want to take a few factors with respect to what's the working culture like, because once you graduate, you might want to work outside the country for a while, for example. and then you would maybe look at the language of instruction, which is I think an important factor as well. Then I would say look at their course structure. What kind of courses do they have? Look at the faculty, look at what kind of research they're doing, because you might have to do a thesis and you might have to do it with one of the faculty who are there at your university. So look at the kind of work that they do. And then depending on the place that you're applying, look up their application deadlines, for example. Yeah.
So basically, there isn't any other requirements that as such the students should have. No entrance test. No.
Well, it depends. So it depends on the country, it depends on the university. So I can tell you at least about the Netherlands, there are no entrance exams. But a lot of programs have some prerequisites. So for instance, you have to have a bachelor's in a certain program, or for example, you have to show some demonstrable background in this subject. So yeah, I mean, it really depends where you're applying.
And so maybe this will be my last question, but have you ever missed history since your transition?
No.
Okay.
Sorry, but I mean, I enjoy history as a hobby, but I mean, I like reading, but I don't think I could do it for a profession.
That's true. And it's good that you took your decision when you took your decision. Because most of the people are at the end stuck and they don't really find their way out.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually done with my bachelor's and I had already enrolled in a master's, so there's no right time for doing this kind of stuff.
Right. It was great talking to you, Manvidi, but this is a very inspiring story of what else one can do with the stream. And I'm so glad that you could take out time for us. I know it was a hectic schedule for you, and I'm so thankful to you to do this with us.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.